crazy, right? Like, just a few years ago, if a teacher in France was killed for showing cartoons in his classroom, it would have been all over the news for weeks.
Yeah.
But, with everything going on with the pandemic and all, it's like these stories just slip through the cracks.
It's easy to miss them.
Exactly. And that's what's got counterterrorism experts worried. They're saying that even though we might not be seeing terrorism in the headlines as much, the danger is still very real, and maybe even more so now.
Yeah. And that's because it's changing. It's becoming harder to pin down, less predictable.
So that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how terrorism is evolving.
Right.
And to help us do that, we're taking a deep dive into this report from the Counter Terrorism Certification Board.
The CTCB.
Yeah, the CTCB, exactly. Now, I know they're focused on fighting terrorism, but they seem to be taking a pretty unique approach.
Yeah, so the CTCB, they're not just about catching terrorists. They're trying to get ahead of the game. They're working on training programs for law enforcement and intelligence agencies.
Global.
Worldwide, yeah. Making sure everyone's using the best strategies, that they're sharing information, and they're even setting standards for how we combat terrorism effectively.
So it's like a global hub for counterterrorism, kind of like a think tank and training ground all in one.
Exactly.
But what's really got their attention? What are they warning us about in this latest report?
Well, one of the big things is that the pandemic, while it messed things up for everyone, actually gave terrorist groups some unexpected advantages.
Really?
Yeah, they adapted.
Wow.
The report specifically talks about the resurgence of a group called Jamaat Islamiyah, or JI for short.
Yeah.
They're a regional terror network, mostly active in Southeast Asia.
JI. That does sound familiar, like something I vaguely remember from maybe 20 years ago or so.
Yeah, around the time of 9/11.
Right.
They were pretty active then.
So remind me, who are they exactly? What makes them so dangerous?
Well, their goal is to create an Islamic state across Southeast Asia.
Oh.
They've got a long history of attacks, and after a while, everyone thought they were pretty much done for.
Weakened.
Yeah, significantly weakened.
But now they're back.
That's what the CTCB is saying.
Yeah.
They've been using the pandemic as an opportunity to regroup.
Oh, wow.
Exploiting all the instability, the social unrest in places like Indonesia, and they're recruiting new members, setting up training camps.
It's like they went dark, laid low during the pandemic, and now they're ready to make a comeback.
Exactly.
And this is all happening while another trend is emerging. Online radicalization, right?
That's right. We were all stuck online during the pandemic.
I know I was.
And these groups, they saw that as a chance to spread their message.
Yeah, it's like a virus, an idea, even a dangerous one. It spreads so fast online.
It absolutely does.
Gets into people's heads.
It's like these platforms become echo chambers where extremist ideologies can take root.
And that can lead to real-world violence.
Exactly. And what's scary is that this online radicalization, it's not just fueling existing groups like JI, it's creating new ones, new forms of terrorism.
So we've got the old guard making a comeback and this whole new wave of potential terrorists online.
It's a double whammy.
Yeah. And on top of all that, the report talks about Terrorism 2.0, these new evolving forms of terrorism.
Right, and that's the part that's really hard to wrap your head around.
I bet.
We don't know what they'll look like exactly.
Yeah, it's impossible to predict, right?
It is, but we can be sure that they'll be shaped by all the changes happening in the world.
Like what?
Well, we're already seeing attacks driven by a mix of ideologies. It's not so clear-cut anymore. It's not just religious extremism. There's political violence, conspiracy theories, all mixed in.
Oh, wow.
And it's not just about organized groups anymore either. We're seeing more lone wolf attacks.
Individuals?
Yeah, inspired by online propaganda. And the targets, they're often seemingly random.
Right, like that teacher in France, Samuel Paty.
Exactly, a tragic example.
Absolutely.
Even though there were links to a larger network, the attack itself was by someone who was radicalized online.
And that shows how these seemingly isolated incidents can actually be part of something much bigger.
Yeah, and how terrorism can take on forms we don't expect, which is what makes it so difficult to combat.
So with established groups like JI reemerging, online radicalization spreading, and these new forms of terrorism popping up, it feels like we're fighting a moving target.
It's a constantly evolving landscape.
What does this mean for us? For everyday people, what can we even do?
The main thing is we can't afford to ignore this.
Right.
We have to stay informed, be aware of the changing nature of the threat. And it's not just the job of governments and intelligence agencies.
We have a role to play too.
Absolutely. We all do. We need to be more careful online, recognize the signs of radicalization.
Like what?
Well, sudden changes in behavior, extreme views, isolation, things like that.
And if we see something, say something.
Exactly.
Report it.
Yes, reporting suspicious activity is crucial.
So it's not just about bombs and bullets anymore. It's about ideas, about understanding how these dangerous ideologies take hold.
That's right. It's about countering those narratives.
And being prepared for threats that might look nothing like what we've seen in the past.
We need to be adaptable.
So if terrorism is changing, what new forms might we see in the future?
Wow.
Especially in a world that's becoming increasingly divided, unstable.
Yeah, with technology evolving at such a rapid pace, it's hard to say.
Right.
But it's something we definitely need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. It's a question that should stay with all of us.
It should.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been really insightful, if a bit unsettling. To all our listeners out there, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.